Warning: the following contains explicit language and subject matter that may not be suitable for younger listeners, church folk, and people who enjoy kale smoothies.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Pot Amongst Men. I'm your host, Steve B., and these are coffee break conversations for the 21st century. Guys, happy 2021. This is my second take because I messed that up last time. We're back. It's a new year. And hopefully this one goes a little differently than the last one because we're tired. So 2021, please be kind. But, we're going to keep plowing through, doing our thing. This is a pot amongst men. We're not quitters. It's not a pot amongst quitters. We're going to keep having those conversations, even if sometimes they're uncomfortable. Sometimes we have a little growing pains, and, we get better for it. That's what this is all about. We're going to have some cool guys this year. We're gonna talk about some real shit. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have some laughs. Maybe even cry a little bit. Who knows? All we know is that we're just trying to be the best men we could be. And that's all this is about. So come along, take the ride with us. We're on a journey ourselves. And I say we, even though it's, I don't see anybody else around here, but I say we because we're all together. You, the listener, and me, the guy running his mouth, talking for way too long. But without further ado, let's get into it. This week, my guests are Brown and Muki, the two hosts of 30 to Life podcast. So these are two Jersey guys. Got to keep representing Jersey here, people. That's where I'm from. But anyway, they're two podcast hosts, 30 to Life podcast. I'm not going to waste your time telling you about who they are. This is actually my first time getting to talk to them, and they're two really generous, really nice guys, really intelligent, and they're sharp dudes, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm not going to describe it anymore. You're going to have to listen to it yourself. I'm not going to give it away for free in the beginning. But without further ado, here's my conversation with Brown and Muki. So, first of all, I should probably introduce myself as, I'm Steve, since we never met before. But, like I said, I found your podcast through Instagram and I started listening and I enjoyed it. I thought, these guys would be great to talk to because it's a similar kind of lane. And now, find out you're both dads, you're both married. We're pretty much the same lane. So do you guys want to give a little introduction as to who you are? Because I feel like since we haven't really met before, you can do it way better than I possibly could.
Yeah. So, but we're recording now, right?
Oh, we're in, bro. We're in.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh,
yeah. All right.
Great.
So
yeah.
So go ahead. All right. So
Yes. 30 to Life, redefining the Black experience. This podcast is really to break stereotypes regarding Black men, to build legacies, build wealth for 30 somethings, and to make sure that we lift as we climb, and really helping others along the way. And when I think about 30 to Life, the first thing that comes to mind is incarceration.
Okay.
But we decided to go with the name and make it a positive spin on the term. So it's really just saying that your 30s through the rest of your life is the best time. This is where you get married, have kids, build your wealth, really, build your legacy. And that's really what 30 to Life represents. And that's kind of how we came up with the name. And every week we try to just debunk stereotypes.
Okay.
And also to educate, our listeners. Our demographic is primarily millennials, right? 28 to 40 approximately, and about 60% women. So we kind of lean a little bit to women sometimes on our topics. But that's 30 to Life. Myself, Muki, I am 30 something, married, kid, work and finance, and your everyday person who wants to learn, educate, and help others. I like to joke, have fun, and just try new things. So that's really me. But I am a girl dad. Shout out to all the girl dads out there. Shout out to Kobe, 2, 4, 8.
2, 4, and 8.
So I am Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
248. What's that mean?
Oh wait, 24. Yeah, so that's Kobe's number. So 24, 24.
Oh,
And
I
then,
thought you said.
yeah.
I
Yes,
thought you were.
Kobe.
Yeah.
Kobe.
I thought you were saying you had a
Thought
2-year-old,
you
a
were
4-year-old, and
adding
an
a day.
8-year-old. I was like, oh, okay, wow.
Oh no, I was
Oh,
shouting out his number, Kobe. No, I'm a Lakers fan. I've been a Lakers fan before it was cool to be a Lakers fan. So shout out to Eddie Jones.
this is true. His fascination with Eddie Jones has been since we were children.
I forgot to ask, where exactly you guys from?
Take a wild guess.
New Jersey?
Yes.
Guess even closer. Guess even closer.
You're not from Somerville, are you?
No.
Oh,
Jersey
okay.
City.
Jersey
City. Oh, okay. That's where I work. I work right on Columbus.
Oh wow.
I'm like
yeah.
down by Newport though. Like all
Yeah,
those high.
you live where the rich people live.
No, I don't. I don't live there. I work there.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the wealth. The wealth is down there.
Yeah, we're trying to get there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I got a train. I got the path. That's it. That's the closest I own something over there.
Nah, I'm on the light rail. I got the second car in. I got the third seat on the left.
We used to get tickets on the light rail when we were younger for like hopping on it
without buying the tag. Yeah.
Honestly, nobody buys tickets anymore. They don't even check.
I believe it.
They don't even check. They don't even check. Like I drive and I park at Liberty State Park and I take the light rail all the way to Exchange Place. They don't even check people's whether or not you paid for your parking spot at the park and ride there, and they don't check for tickets on the train.
Wow.
So what's the business model here, guys? I don't get it.
I don't know, Brown. We got different experience with taking the light.
Oh, hang on, before we get in, Brown, you got to do your intro, okay?
All right. So I am Brown, also known as your favorite color in the world. I'm a father. I'm an introvert that loves to be an occasional extrovert. Creative. I believe we are all creative beings in our own way, shapes, or form, and we are all consciously creating and unconsciously creating. But I like to pay special attention to the creative part. I'm a father to 2 beautiful children. One recent boy. He's 4 months. I'm going on 5 months years old.
Congratulations.
Sorry, not years old, but 5 months old.
I got it.
Thank you so much. And I have an 11-year-old daughter. Big gap, but I love the help. I'm a father. Been married for a little over a year now. It's been an amazing ride. Essential worker by day, stock investor by night, trader by night. Let's be more specific. But yeah, I consider myself a black geek, a black nerd. And I just I like geeky things, I guess.
I mean, I'm all for that 100%. If you can see right here.
Yeah.
But so how did you guys can you describe the genesis of the 30 to Life podcast? How did this start? What inspired you guys? Everybody's got their own story, something they heard something one day, like, you know what? I should do that. How did it work for you?
All right, you want the real story? All right, so this is the story. So I like to say that me and Brown was the originators of podcasting, because back in 2009 we had a show. It was called the TNT radio show, comedy show, and we did this once a week for a year and a half. And when we did it, we were getting probably close to 4,000 or 5,000 listeners a week, and it was before the podcast. We were doing it live, so people would get on their computer, download it, and listen to us as we went through it, right? Online radio. So this is before a podcast. We went through different changes in our life and stopped doing it. But we always were saying, once we saw
I had a kid and I was like, I gotta work.
That'll do it.
I was a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, and everything was put on me, and I'm like, I'm starting to work now too, school over and everything. I'm like, I can't do everything, So we naturally, just from the pressures of everyday life, just stopped doing it. let's fast forward. Probably this is 2009, 2011. Go to 2013. We're like, we got to do this again, guys, and let's do it live again because that just makes it much easier to do. But we all were living pretty much like in 3 different states, kind of.
Okay.
New Jersey, New York, and we had one person in Delaware, and we all would come up live at the same time, like 10 p.m. to record this, and then our servers would shut down every time for like the first 4 episodes. So then that was gone. So fast forward, we have this huge explosion of podcasts, and once in a while, someone who was in the podcast would be like, "Man, y'all would have been big if you would have did it."
Yeah. I feel like that's the most important part is getting your foot in the door early ahead of everybody else.
We literally like said to ourselves this time, if we just stay consistent and just see what happens, and because to us we had the content, we had the people calling in, and it was funny, and it was so immature and stupid, but we still had our little loyal listeners, and we just this time around we said to ourselves, let's just keep going and see what happens. Let's put all of our effort into it. And, because we feel like we're both intelligent people. We both have different gifts that we can contribute into this. And, for this time, we just said to ourselves, hey, let's just push through this full throttle and, see what happens.
It's, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but the catalyst really was just, the coronavirus this year, where it was just like, let's do it. Like, don't think twice about it. Why it will fail, just like why we just focus on why it will be successful. And then from there, we just came up with a new name, changed the name, changed the content a lot based upon us. Changed the content a lot based upon us, the growth that we had over the last, let's call it, 8-9 years.
Oh yeah, you
so
gotta
a lot
imagine
of things that we learned. Yeah.
Quite a jump from 2009 era to now.
Light years, self-awareness, definitely.
Did you ever stop and think like, what the hell was I doing? Like, dude, I didn't even watch the news back then. Like, I had no idea what was going on in the world. I just knew I wanted to, I went to work and I wanted to go to the bar and drink with my friends and maybe hook up. That's all. That's my whole life. That was my entire existence.
I think I was the sheep that people talk about now. like you were just going through this mundane thing of life, and you think that you had to go to the bar, like you said, and go to the club. For us, it was the club. We had to go to the club in the city all the time, and then find a group of drunk women to hopefully sleep with that we never got lucky doing. but it was just not doing what's important. And I feel like, because we have this hindsight now, we can kind of help those that are in their 20s, prepare themselves and kind of do things that we wish we could have been doing in our 20s, like investing,
So I think we were just worried about the wrong things, and you get caught up in that, just wanting to, you get your first real paycheck, and then it's just like, hey, let me just spend it all to have as much fun because I didn't get to do it, maybe when I was younger or something. And, it then becomes like a snowball effect where, you continuously make the wrong decisions and you never actually achieve any level of growth.
I'm trying to think of like it. I don't know if for you guys it was the same, but I know like for me, there was a point where I just kind of realized like, you know what? I haven't actually been doing anything with myself. Like, I've been going out having fun. That's great. But what is it all for? What am I working towards? And I'm trying to think if there was a certain point in time where that switch flipped for me. Do you guys know if there was a time for you where that happened, where that change came?
For me, it was having my daughter. Like, I was literally just graduated from college with my biology degree in 2009. Market crashed. Couldn't find a job. So for me, it was like, I had a baby on the way. I had this college degree. I had this woman or the mother of my child who had a job. She graduated college a year before me, so she had already been working for a year. So now she's looking at me like, like I'm just like worthless, So I had this feeling of like, well, maybe I am worthless. I'm not working, I can't even afford a haircut at this point. I'm just like, and I had literally just like left college. So and I left college on top, I would say, because I was in a fraternity and I had this, for me, I was like this miniature celebrity on this college campus, or in my head,
Yeah.
And then
we all are to some extent.
Yeah, and then I just went to this fall bam, and I couldn't even afford a haircut, and I had a child. So for me, like I had to like kick it into gear in a way.
Mhm.
So I feel like I was forced, like kind of like when someone throws you into the water and you got to figure out how to swim. Like that
Yep.
was me.
That's how my dad taught me to swim. Hey, figure it out, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
What about you?
for me, for me,
Sorry, hang on.
um,
Refill.
I definitely, I definitely agree with the sentiments in terms of that transition from the last day in college to the real world is insane, right? It's just like, okay, you have no responsibilities. Then it's like, oh, you got these student loan payments that you have to pay, and you have to figure out the real world, and everything's just different. But that first year is just like, oh, I got to get a job, got to figure it out and everything. And you just, once you get that job, like I mentioned earlier, you just want to spend some of your money. So for me, it probably took me 2009, graduated in finance, eventually found a job right after college, and then, still not doing what I needed to be doing, especially because I had so much student loans, but I still was acting like wasn't important. So for me, it was like 2011, 12 timeframe. The first thing I came across was like Mr. Money Mustache. I don't know if you heard of him, but
Is that
he's
like the
just
Monopoly
basically an
guy?
extreme money person. No, he's like an extreme money person.
Okay.
And when I saw this, I was like, people go to this extreme to like not have to work anymore. And it's just like, finding riding your bike to work and all these different things, investing and saving the electricity and all these different things. And it was like, this is the extreme. And I was like, I could take some things from that to improve my situation. So it was like not getting a credit card knowing I'm not going to pay it back, and just like small little things that I started to add on. And year by year I would change a little bit about myself each and every year, so that much like investing in you compound growth, as a person I was compounding into a better person just by reading different books each and every year. So our last episode we did Rich Dad Poor Dad, that was a book that I read like in 2012, which helped me change my mindset. Then I read like Never Eat Alone, and then I read Millionaire Next Door and Outliers and all these different books, all like in the same time frame, beginning like 2012, and it just constantly changed my thought process and my views, and just I started to accelerate.
See, you guys, those are very good stories. I feel like now I'm thinking about mine, and it doesn't sound as good. Like number one, so I'm an electrician. I'm a construction worker by trade. So I didn't go to school. I knew that I was just gonna waste my time and money there. So I decided against it. And I moved out.
Good decision.
I don't have any student loan debt. Don't worry, I got the debt later on, just not from school. But I moved out in the beginning of 2009. And I remember like in that fall, like I'd been out now for a few months, and I went to take this girl out on a date. We went down to Philly, and I remember I was going to get my car out of the parking lot and pay for parking. It was like $25 or something like that. And I'm like, my card's not working. So I had to go to the ATM. Now I'm embarrassed because I know it's cold. I know we want to leave, but I don't have any money. Let me go check. And I'm looking and my account's negative. And I'm like, oh, fuck. It's like that reality sets in. You get that cold feeling and that flop sweat on your forehead.
Yeah.
You start looking like Shaq at the foul line. You just, all right, how am I going to figure this one out? And to me, that was a wake up call. I was like, all right, you've just been, hanging out, partying, living life for this what lasts several months, and now bitch in the ass. And now you deal with the shame and like, all right, I gotta transfer some money around and try to figure this one out. And after that, I was like, you know what, I gotta start thinking a little bigger and being a little more serious. You get a cheap rent in some shitty apartment. You think you're the king of the world, and then you realize you're not even the big fish in a small pond. You're like the little fish in a little pond. You know what I mean? It's very humbling. So now you guys have this podcast, and like you said, you've grown since you guys first started doing the thing back in 2009. So would you say that? I mean, I know you said breaking stereotypes is kind of like the goal of the podcast. Could you kind of elaborate a little bit on that, like what that entails? Like what is the mission statement, if there is one, of the show?
So we as African Americans, I mean, and I think we need the world to understand that we are fairly a new, I guess, race. I guess we're all one human race, but
Hmm.
I guess our culture is a better word. We're like
Okay.
our culture is very new, and for instance, like most people of European descent can trace their roots back to Greek, and or Europe somewhere, or Norway, or Scotland or whatever. But we can kind of guess,
Hmm.
West Africa somewhere. So
Yeah.
we've kind of had to develop our own culture, and it's a new culture in comparison to the other cultures of the world. And I just feel like because of that, because of its newness, and because of its newness, I'll just leave it at that. The world has developed or kind of narrated our story for us
Hmm.
without allowing us to narrate it ourselves. And so, we really want our show to be a show where someone who is of European descent to look at our show and really say, hey, they're not all like what we thought they were. Or
Hmm.
we can go to, or someone from China can look at it and say, wow, like, they're not like who we thought they were. Like, they're like we are. Like, we're like, there are so many different frequencies of who Black people are. We're not just this one box. And so we kind of want to demystify all of the myths that to say like really just to knock down the door that say we're just like you all are. Like, we're not
Yeah.
the stereotypes that you want to portray on us.
Yeah, and our podcast is really just for us to think outside of the box within that stereotype, because to be honest, most of us have never been in the box, so our perspective is always going to be different from others.
Hmm.
So we want to make sure we bring that to every episode, a different optic, different viewpoint, perspective of like what the experience is, and hone on redefining that for people. So our podcast is focused on like the Black experience, but it's really, when you listen to it, it's for everyone.
Like that goes back to like the phrase you always hear, in the news or in culture. They say, Black people are not a monolith, and that's, I feel like to anybody who's been around, anybody who's from a culture different than their own, like, that same applies to every culture. You know what I mean? Whereas, for instance, say, you're married, you're married to a Hispanic woman, okay, like I am. And you say, all right, well, she's Hispanic, so she believes this. Like, no, like, everybody's different. They range just as much as, from one end of the spectrum to the other as everyone else. And I feel like the people that don't see that, they really benefit from getting to know something different than their own, immediate life experience. Just kind of stepping outside your own bubble. You know what I mean? Like, that was always something.
Yeah, I think it's also. No, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying that was kind of something I wanted to accomplish with this show, is to show people that come from all different backgrounds, different parts of the world, and then just have a conversation and realize, like, we're all pretty similar at the end of the day. Even in the ways that we actually differ, we all have a lot of things in common. And just because we don't look alike, or we don't talk alike, or we don't come from the same area, like, a lot of those experiences are just kind of universal to all of us. In this case, mostly men. That's, a pot amongst men that kind of have a built-in demographic right there. But I say I kind of pigeonholed myself a little bit. But yeah, at the end of the day, go ahead, your turn.
No, it's really cool that though, like, because like even like as you were saying that, and like I'm looking at your background and I'm seeing like, man, like that's what I would have in my man cave. And like I've never met you. I've never seen you before, like, but I love X-Men too. Like, my favorite X-Men is Professor X. I've always wanted a samurai sword. I was thinking, like, as soon as I buy my house, I'm gonna get a samurai sword. Like, so like they're a little like and like there is something that always connects us, and I think that really is the answer to it all. I really feel like we focus so much on how different we are, rather than focusing on like what makes us the same. And I think that's the true answer to life, like once everyone in the world kind of figures that out, we'll all like hold hands and sing Kumbaya to some extent. But I digress there.
Don't you think it's almost like a thin line to walk a little bit, though? Because we want to understand and recognize our differences and the things that are unique to each of our cultures, but not let that be the only thing that defines us. You know what I mean? Like I think it's better that we recognize those things and appreciate them and love them. It's like, oh, Steve's Italian, so he probably knows a lot about how to cook Italian food well. That's the one thing that Italians give everybody is food. That's what we got. Sorry, and we take those things and we appreciate them, and then we share them with everyone else, and then we come back at the end of the day. We all have these shared things in common. I think we're all better to focus on that, but still, appreciate and acknowledge the differences. Just not let that be the things that define us.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a balancing act. The media goes to the extreme on one end, and then there are people in our everyday lives that go far on the other end, and it's just more of like we have to be centered, right? We got to be able to regardless of our viewpoints, be able to look at both sides and really come to which one reflects our values, what's most important to us, and have an honest dialogue. I think that's lost nowadays. It's like, hey, we have two different viewpoints, but can we listen to each other, see what your rationale is, and discuss it without name calling or yelling at each other and talking about people in general.
So as you two are content creators and as podcasters specifically, I know a lot of people in this area, they try to steer clear of politics and any kind of divisive topics. How do you guys feel about that in terms of just running the show and talk things like that? Because I know in the beginning, I wouldn't touch that stuff with a 10-foot pole, like politics or religion. But, as I got further in, I just decided, like, what the fuck? I would rather people like me for who I am than who I'm pretending to be, instead of just trying to be this little milquetoast down the middle guy. But that's not me. So, like, how do you guys approach that?
I'm gonna talk from myself here. I feel like Black people need to discuss politics more. Historically speaking, Black people vote Democrat. The majority, like the majority of us, we have voted Democrat. I remember feeling like, I had to vote Democrat because, my mom voted Democrat or my father voted Democrat. So, I vote Democrat too, not knowing any of the policies, any of what was going on, I just was the sheep that people talk about now. I mean, that's just how, I'm sorry to be rude but that's just the best way I can explain it. That's the best way I can explain it. So I think Black people have been dealt a bad card,
just one.
Politically speaking, politically speaking,
you're very generous, Brown. You're very generous.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying. I'm trying to. So on the show, I think I'm a little bit more extreme. So okay. I'm trying to take it back a little bit for your sake.
Well, listen, but, we can get into it.
We'll get into it a little bit. But
you're not gonna shock me. I promise.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Black people have been shitted on. We've everything has been stolen from us: our culture, our religion, our spiritualities, our riches, our land, and so when it comes to America, one of the primary places or countries that is responsible for that, one of them, I feel like it's time to pay us back what we owe, and what we're really wanting is just equality and equity. We want to be able to have the same schools that your children go to. We want to have the same health or health insurance or opportunities in general that your children do. We want the American dream or our own version of what the American dream is too. So and the legislation in our government does not allow that to happen. Still to this day, I mean, yes, we've made progress, but with what scientific progress we made, why can't we make that much progress with our how our government handles Black people and Black policies? And I just we just want changes, and I feel like if more Black people talk about these things and really have that honest dialogue and really have opinions from opposite sides, we won't always vote Democrat, we won't always vote Republican. If that ever, I don't think that would happen, but but
Yeah,
we will
it
have
happens. It happens sometimes.
we will
Ben
have
Carson was
opposing
a real
thoughts.
guy.
Well, see, now I like Ben Carson. We'll go into that later if you want to, but
We
but
can.
yeah, like we'll just
Yeah.
but yeah, at the end of the day, I just feel like more dialogue will eventually lead to more change.
Yeah, and for our podcast, we touch on politics, we'll touch on religion, we'll touch on all these taboo topics, and really be cognizant of the I want to say social pressures to be politically correct. So we won't be rude or inconsiderate in terms of like people who are really going through different topics that we may address. But it's important to have the conversation. I think if the fact that we come at it from an honest perspective and we're learning through the podcast, which our listeners are also learning as well, people are going to be okay with that. So that's our take on it.
Well, it's the nuance of it. As long as, like you said, if you come into it from an honest perspective and recognizing that not every topic or subject is, for lack of a better term, black or white. Like there's nuance, there's areas of gray in everything. I feel like as long as you approach things like that, it's kind of hard to get yourself into any hot water. I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be people that have a problem with something, but in terms of serious consequences, I can't see, well, I mean, who knows? It's a crazy time right now. Who knows? You could say anything. Yeah, for me, I have always felt like a kind of a black sheep, especially for my family, because I'm the only, liberal person out of a family of conservatives. And, I became a union member, and, I'm an agnostic. I don't follow any religions. I don't really believe in it. And I've always felt like that made me like an outcast. I've never felt comfortable around my own, my own people, so to speak. Like I don't fit in with that. And it's tough because I always want people to like me. I always believe that, people who say they don't care what people think are full of shit, because everybody does. You want people to like you because it's going to make your life easier. So as far as some of the stuff that I believe, I don't want to just come right out and say everything. Like, I don't want to get into an argument with everybody at the Dunkin' Donuts. You know what I'm saying? So I've always tried to kind of censor myself a little bit, and I don't think it's really worth it. As long as you recognize, like I said, there's nuance. Issues are nuanced. And there's one thing I found, this is something I've been saying to my wife lately, is that there's no solutions. There's only trade-offs. And if you look at, problems and issues like that, it really helps you keep things in perspective. Like, oh, why do they do this? They fucked over these people. It's like, well, I mean, not everybody's a evil corporate stooge. Some people are still legitimately trying to do the right thing, but it's just not that easy. No matter what you do, somebody's going to be unhappy with it. I don't know. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but yeah, I've generally steered clear of politics until the last, I don't know, probably since, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know it sounds kind of corny, but with the whole George Floyd thing, that was kind of like, what, it's not worth avoiding those topics. So just be honest. And you mentioned PC culture and like political correctness. And I feel like that it's such a catch-all phrase that it gets a bad rep. And I feel like if people just looked at it as like, just don't be an asshole, be kind and be considerate. That's it. And you're pretty much safe after that. What do you think about anything I just said in that rambling, incoherent response?
You mentioned something about, well, so in regards to just being politically correct, right?
Okay.
I feel like within the Black community, you have to be politically correct. And that's being, a Democrat. You have to, and if you're anything other than that, then you're an Uncle Tom. And for us to be an Uncle Tom is like, to our own people, is kind of like, it's like a stab, because you're not, because as a Black person, you kind of have that fear or anxiety of not being accepted by white America, and then now you're not being accepted by your own new culture of
Yeah.
people. And so then you're like, you're an outcast, and you don't want to be who wants to be an outcast? Like,
Yeah.
I think of Divergent. Like, you don't want to be like the people that were like casted out of like the city. Like, you want to be with everybody else. so I mean, I think that was a fear of mine, but even before like talking about politics on the show. Like, I never really wanted to talk about it either, because I had that fear of being outcasted,
Mhm.
and then I think it was just my journey of just self-actualization and self-awareness, and then really just being confident enough to say, like, and I really don't care about what people say, and that's what that's why I said when you said that, like, I have to disagree with you. I feel like you can get to a point where you don't care about what people say, because
Mhm.
that for me was my like demon, because I was always someone who cared about what people said, and that really inhibited me
Mhm.
to a lot. Like, it made me shy. It really, in my head, it forced opportunities away that I could have had. So for me, I felt like I'd been battling this demon of really not caring what people say. And so for me with this show, I think about what one of the things that I learned from this show is really to just not care what people say, but also be smart about what I say, because I also don't want to hurt people's feelings. And so it's not, for me, it's not so much about being scared about what I'm saying, but I don't want to offend anybody, because I
Mhm.
don't. I mean, I'm a feeling person, so
Mhm.
I know what it feels like to be offended. So I don't want to purposely offend anybody.
I think you're
Yeah.
spot on. I gotta let me just make a point of clarification too. Like I agree with everything you just said, and it's not that I don't think people don't care about. How do I say? I don't think it's people. I mean, geez, I gotta reword this now properly. I think you should care about how people view you, just for the sake of appreciating how you're viewed and how you're going to be moving around in the world. It's not
Be
saying you
open
should.
to it. Yeah, I got you.
Exactly. Not saying we should
Yeah.
censor ourselves and not be our authentic selves just because people might not like us, but at least recognize the impact you're having on the people around you. I think that's what I was really trying to get at. So I think, yeah, I agree
Agreed.
with everything you
Yeah.
said. All right, Mookie, sorry to interrupt, bro. You're up.
Yeah. And you mentioned, the compromise or trade-offs
Mm-hmm.
that's a part of life. I think that's just naturally, right? We're all married, we make compromises, right? That's Compromise is the key. Communication is the key. I mean, much of that is dealing with relationships, and you have a
Yeah.
relationship in your marriage, you have a relationship with your coworkers, you have a relationship with, your friends, family, etc. So I do think there is a part now, since we have so much access to information, that you almost have to live in the gray, because what you've been told may be different than what it actually is,
Mm-hmm.
and what's told on television will different than what it actually is. And it's like, okay, there are a lot of half truths, so it's important that you know the full truths, so that you can make the best decisions for you and your family, as you navigate through this world.
For sure. And I think us being older millennials, as you put it, it puts us in a very kind of unique spot where we're the first generation that's grown up without and with the internet. You know what I mean? Like, we were
Mhm.
born, we grew up, we came up before it was ever a thing, and then we evolved and grew with it. So we were there from the beginning.
Right.
Back in the days of like AOL, and then moved on to AIM, and then you had MySpace and Facebook and so on and so forth. So we were there every step of the way. So it's almost like a peer, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's like we've seen it, we know how it works, we know that there's kind of like unspoken etiquette, so you don't look like a creep or a psycho online, and that puts us in a very different position than our parents' generations and even Gen Xers to a certain extent, and now like the young kids like Gen Z. Like those kids, they have no concept of what life was like without the internet. Whereas, the older generations, they were the ones telling us, don't believe anything you see online. And now all of a sudden they're showing, oh, did you know that Venezuela, was rigging our election? We're right in the middle. And I feel like we have the sweet spot, but nobody else does.
And I also think that makes us kind of responsible for leading the next generation, or the generations behind us, because
Mm-hmm.
just like you said, like, we know what it's like to have internet and what it's like to have without internet. Like we still played outside. Like I think of my daughter, like she's 11 years old, and like she didn't go outside in front of the house and play. Like, I was like not having that. I was like, but we did that. Like me and Muki, we went outside and we played. Like we used to make up Olympics, like Olympic courses and stuff like that. So,
Water gun fights.
So like,
oh yeah.
But we also went on AOL and AIM. Like,
Yeah.
so like exactly. So because we know what it's like, I think we still have a responsibility to teach them what it could be for them as well, which is like playing board games. Like I was teaching my daughter to play chess. Like, and it was cool. Like it wasn't like we didn't need an electronic. We didn't have to plug it in. Like we just literally sat in front of the board and we were just like, and I was teaching her how to play, and it was just like, wow.
She said, Daddy, where do you plug the charger in for these things?
Yeah.
I know me and my friends, when we were young, we would play the game WCW versus NWO for Nintendo 64. And we were big into wrestling. And then we would go outside and actually do the moves on each other. So it's like you said, we're both things. We're in and out. Muki, look at you were locked up, ready to say something right there.
Yeah, no, I mean, once you said NWO and N64, I just thought of Smash Brothers and GoldenEye. Those are the two things that for us, that's what we played all the time. You know, and then we'll go outside and play basketball, right? Yep. Play basketball. So we used to it was a balance. I think our generation.
I was like, when GoldenEye, we used to play the stack level, and whoever got Odd Job, we would say, "Oh, you cheap." He would just, and then we would
my God,
we would just make him run around in a circle.
Odd Job was a cheat.
Yeah, you just run around in a circle, and just laugh as people try to shoot you, and they can never hit you.
Yeah, we had one friend who that's the only person he chose. Only person
he was cheating every time. He wouldn't play with us unless he had Odd Job.
And by the way, Odd Job was like a short, like little person, right? Being PC here, that was a cheat code, right? You couldn't shoot him, right? Because he was so short.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have to explain. You don't have to explain to anybody. This one's for the purists right here. You know what I mean? For the real nerds. If they don't get it, too bad for them.
Yeah, you're right.
See, we got a lot of girls on our podcast, so sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, let's explain a little bit." Yeah,
no, I promise you, anybody who's listening to this, literally, I have Thor's hammer as part of the logo. They know who Odd Job is. So now we're all parents, and you mentioned something. How we used to play outside, and kids today don't. Now, I don't know. I read this book. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind. By Jonathan Haidt, and it illuminated something to me. Like, we are so much more protective of our kids. Like, if you consider when we were young, we would go out hours, no phone, just a bike. Nobody knew where we were. No, I don't even remember anybody coming looking for me, first of all. And you'd just be out all day, and everything was fine. And I mean, for the most part, everybody seemed okay. Like, unless you're unfortunate and you weren't okay. But now we don't even let our kids out of our sight. And it's because we're constantly aware that there's terrible things that could happen. And I don't think that our parents weren't aware. I just think that it wasn't always in their face the way it is now, with the 24-hour news cycle, with social media. We see everything. We see a kid goes missing in Seattle. Say, okay, well, so there's a pedophile out there. It's like, yeah, there's a guy in Seattle, maybe. Or maybe the kid just, didn't check in. We don't know. But here in New Jersey now, we're clutching our kids. It's like, oh, you're not going to leave my sight. So if you track, like crime stats and stuff over time, technically we're in a safer period now than we were back then. Like, there's less incidents, but the ones that happen get elevated more and they get pushed more to the front. So it seems like there's more because we're hearing about more, but the numbers don't actually reflect that in reality. So it's like our kids, like the world's never been safer for our kids, but we're letting them do so much less. And to me, this has always been a thing, like a conversation with my wife where, like, I want my son to go out and just go fucking dig a hole somewhere. I don't care. Get out of the house. You need to learn independence. And I feel like we're kind of stunting our kids' growth with that. Now, I don't know how you guys approach it, but what do you think about all that?
So I think, and I don't want to bring the race card, but it's different I'm going to say it's different for us. And this is the only reason why I feel like that. I think it's different for Black children because, we, when a Black child gets killed by a police officer, it gets pushed to the forefront. Mm-hmm. And it gets pushed to the forefront a lot more these days. And it kind of stimulates traumas of when back in slavery, when, the slave men were beaten in front of the children and wives, and that caused emotional traumas, and that scarred them down generation to generation. And so kind of we're seeing similar events, but we're seeing them in a more modernized way. I mean, and that might sound extreme to some people, and I understand why you might think so, but in reality, to many of us, this is what we're kind of seeing. We're seeing these things in our head. So we have this emotional trauma when it comes to being victimized by police officers that I think that no other person in American history has ever had. Like we did an episode on this, and the origins of the police were basically slave catchers. Like that was their job, was to catch slaves, like runaway slaves. And now, years later, they're the police. And and I'm not saying that all police are bad. I don't believe that at all. I just think that you to really elaborate on our view of what it is to really have our children and go outside and be fearful for their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with I mean, I agree with Brown. But I do think there is it's a multi factor equation in terms of why kids, well, let's say specifically our kids. So I have a 1-year-old. She's not going outside anytime soon, but when she does, it's going to have to be in a specific community. Because when we grew up, I think everyone in the neighborhood knew, in the immediate radius, we knew all the kids, we knew the parents, so that's important. Two, with technology, I think we care more about our children and less about our neighbors. It's weird. We have this technology, but we probably don't have our neighbor's cell phone number, which is different than when you had your neighbor's home number. True. So I think about that. And then, it's this racial element where it's just now, because the media just 24/7 just talks about, police brutality. You think about that for your children, especially if you have a son, you're just going to think about that constantly. Can my child make the right decision? And we do baby our children now more than ever. And I think it's as a result of technology, and it's a result of just parenting being a little bit just emphasized. Because if you look at it, in previous decades, let's say the 1950s and before, to be considered a good parent, all you had to do was provide food and shelter. Now it's you have to make sure, they are, studying the instrument. You got to make sure that they understand STEM. You got to make sure that they, can do multiple languages. That's the scale for being a great parent now, where before it was just, survival for a lot. Of people.
The
now
bar
it's
has
much
been
different.
severely raised.
Been raised severely, and there's no form of punishment that is acceptable. Even timeout is looked at a bad thing nowadays. So we're in a very weird area when it comes to parenting, and as my daughter gets older, it's really navigating and figuring that out, because it's changed so much in such a short amount of time, which it just makes it scary. Just having children who will be from day one social media. What is that like? Imagine us in grammar school with having social media accounts. And if you were a nerd, you'll make yourself the most popular because all the algorithms and everything to have this persona. I think nerds in general will probably be most popular people because they'll figure out how to have the best online. I'm going on a tangent, but it just makes you think about all these different things with parenting.
So there's a couple different layers in what you just said too. I think our generation, our parents are like most of them are baby boomers. So, that generation come from a different time. I hate to say it, maybe I sound a little ageist, but I don't give a shit. It is what it is. Very selfish generation. They were all like the free love and expression, and now they're all uber capitalist and fuck everybody. Give me that, it's mine. That's the whole concept. So I feel like our generation now is trying to go in the other direction. We're trying to be there for our kids and be loving and nurturing parents and give our kids, the emotional support that a lot of us never got. But it's like the pendulum, it's almost like an overcorrection in some cases where you become a helicopter parent. You know what I mean? And it's funny. It reminds me, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the comedian John Mulaney, but he had a great bit. He was like, one of the biggest changes since I was a kid is kids have a lot more rights nowadays. Like when I was a kid, like nobody gave a shit what I said. It was like my parents would believe anybody else other than me. A hobo could bring me up and say, your son bit my dick. And my mom would be like, John, did you bite the nice man's dick? And I would say, well, doesn't anyone want to know why my biters were near this man's dick? But it's funny because it's true. Like nowadays, everybody, and understandably, like we want to take our kids' side. We want to show them that we have their back, that they can depend on us. But sometimes it goes a little awry, like when the parents are blaming the teacher because the kid, doesn't do their homework, something silly like that. So it's in some cases, I feel like it's an overcorrection, but if you follow what I think are the logical steps, like it makes sense because I know I'm trying to teach my kid about stuff that nobody taught me. Like I had to figure out on my own, what it means to be a man and how to be a good man at that, how to not just, be in touch with your emotions. Like there's nothing wrong with it. We had these stigmas attached to all this stuff and nobody taught me and I had to figure it out on my own. And I probably screwed up a lot of times along the way. So
yeah, it's so funny that you say that because I have that same conversation with my mother all the time. I was like, why didn't you teach me about this? Like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? I even asked my dad. I was like, yo, like I had to figure out how to be a man on my own as well. Like what I did was I just took different qualities of different men that were in my life, and I either said, hey, I want this, or all right, I don't like this part. But yeah, I asked my parents that same question, like, why didn't you teach me? And they said, we did what we could. It's up to you to now lay the foundation for your children because you're not going to be able to teach them everything either. And I thought about that, and I was like, yeah, like there are probably going to be certain things I'm going to miss. It's probably going to be one day where my son's going to sit me down and say, Dad, why didn't you teach me this? Like you and I'll probably say, I just didn't think about it, or something like that. But it's to me it's like a pyramid, and we have to just make sure we lay our foundation for the next generation, and that's really what our show is like as well, because we want to provide legacies for our children. We want for them to see us one day and say, hey, but we made our dreams come true. We put the work in. We put the effort in. We worked full-time jobs, and we still make this happen. So you can too. We want to build legacies.
Yeah.
And to add to like the parenting for us with the podcast, it makes me just think about, every generation, the next generation was always going to be better than the other generation, and so on and so forth. But I think in this age where instant gratification is so prevalent, and like because of social media, I do think we could be taking a step back or two in terms of that, ensuring that the next generation. So I think it's important, and this will emphasize on the podcast, is like, just because you shouldn't necessarily buy everything that maybe you didn't have as a child. I think it's important to teach your kids what you didn't know as a child or as an adult, and pass that on to them first. That's important to go through that process, because it's always like, oh, I didn't have this, let me get this. But what about, oh, I didn't know how to invest, let me teach my child how to invest at a young age. Or I didn't know how to budget, or I didn't know my credit score was so important in this American capitalist society. So it's important that we do for our children, but we also teach our children and allow them to the make mistakes, but also be there, in terms of, catching them if it does happen.
I think for like most middle income Black families, like their goal was to just get their children through college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like that seems like you know how many times I've heard someone say, "Oh, I'm the first one in my family that went to, that graduated college," and that's the badge of honor. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
the hope I believe would be now the next generation. The minimum bar is like, all my kids went to college, not just one person in the family. And it builds off that, and that I get that goes back to what you guys were saying with with building equity in the Black community. Historically, the Black community didn't have the same opportunities that white people had, so there was no opportunity. There's no chance to build any equity. Everything was either taken or it was suppressed. I mean, look at the Black Wall Street in Oklahoma and Tulsa.
Yeah.
Like that was a prosperous community, and what happened? It was literally burned and people were murdered. Like that's a microcosm, So I don't know why I'm bringing that up, but I understand the idea of wanting to have the legacy. I understand, what you're saying when you talk about that. I do want to go back though. Before we continue, you did mention like you want to give your kids all the things that you didn't have, as opposed to teaching them all the things you didn't know. And that's been one of the biggest conflicts for me. Do I want to give my kid the best life possible, or is that going to spoil them and then it's going to become like a crutch that they lean on? You know what I mean? Like that for me has been the biggest conflict. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think it's the teach then give, a process. Because so I looked at parenting, right, and we look at like the Asian demographic, right? They hit the ball off in academics. You look at Ivy League, like at Harvard, they're overpopulated, right? Mm-hmm. To be, a small percentage of the population that overloaded. So it's like, high standards is very important that we need to have in the Black community, in terms of like building equity, right? It's very important, high standards. And then the balance act with that is like, you didn't have a lot when you were growing up. But when I think about that, our times have changed so much, where in our same generation, all of us growing up, going out to eat used to be a luxury. Having one TV was a luxury. Having one phone was a luxury. So at the bare minimum, your kids, even if you don't make a lot of money, it's going to have a much better experience than you had growing up, because everything is normalized now. Mm-hmm. Eating out, phones, toys, iPads, everything is just normalized. So it's more of like, there's a strong balancing act, because it's so easy to give our kids luxuries because it's so affordable now than previous generations. So I think it's just a balancing act. And I do think for us, me parenting, and just knowing that I have to raise the standards because it's so much that we have to make up for. But at the same time, I want my child to have a great experience as a child, not being like a tiger mom. When I just think about it, right, like that term and stuff, but you want that excellence for your child.
Yeah.
But it's a balancing act with that.
I don't know, me, I'm sorry, I want my children to never know what it feels like to have to work for anything hard. I mean have dedication, but to actually like manual labor and all that stuff, I'm okay with my children not knowing how to mow a lawn. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind if they grew up with a butler. I want what I want from my children. I want my children to have generational wealth. Like I want to be able to die and leave my children in estates, and I want my contribution to my family to be that mindset, and I want it generational. Like I want 100 years from now for that money to still be within the family, and that to be just as important as to my great grandson. So that's how I look at it. I want that type of wealth. So I'm okay with my children not having to shovel snow. Anything like that.
I don't know. I was always just afraid. Like I think about how I view like the kids who typically did have that generational wealth. I mean, that's not where I come from, but we all know those guys. They come, every they just get their license, and next thing you know, they show up at school with a BMW. It's like, I know you didn't buy that shit. Yeah. Come on. And I always look down on that. I always think like you don't deserve that. You didn't do anything to earn that. You didn't work. And not that I think that there's necessarily a specific virtue in manual labor or anything, but just knowing how to set a goal and accomplish it. That's my big thing. I don't want to raise a spoiled brat, essentially. And that's the conflict for me.
And to me, that's perseverance, though. Mm-hmm. To me, that's perseverance. That's not like, to me, like for instance, I learned like the rich don't work hard for their money. Like, like that's in my head now. Like I understand like rich, they don't work hard for their money. so why should my children do it? So for me, if I could teach them to persevere, to start something and to finish it, to me, that's more important. But, everyone sees the world differently, but,
Yeah. And I agree. It's very important to make sure that what you give them, they grow it and expand it to the next generation. Because, when you think of these people who are so wealthy, a lot of times they have provisions on, their trust and all these different things to make sure it goes on to the next legacy. Like if you look at the Kennedys, you look at the Rockefellers, they have these dynasty trusts where they have provisions, right? You can use it for medical, education, all these different things, but you can't use it, if you want to just buy a jet, but you can use it for the things that will help you, put you in a good situation. So, the generational wealth is the goal, I think, for most people. Most people don't think about it as often as we do on this podcast, but it's important. And I think one point that you made was just you didn't earn it, and that's through parenting. You teach your kids how to earn different things, right? Which is to earn an A, or to earn a trophy in terms of sports, through these processes and little things, through parenting. And those lessons, our goal is to make sure that those values help them make the best decisions growing up. And that's why it's like the reward system is good, right? You got A's, you did this, we want you to do this, you figured it out, right? Let your child make a decision, right? And they make the right decision and they do well, and then you give them some type of reward for that, and give them more experiences versus like physical things is important. Yeah, because you're gonna remember that stuff. The toys, I don't remember the exact toys, but the experiences, I remember those as a young child.
I don't know. I still remember my Ninja Turtles action figures from Secret of the Ooze. They were the rubber ones. They weren't the joints. The whole thing was rubber except for the shell. I remember those. So I mean, I hate to prove you wrong, but I'm kidding. Yeah, no. One of the things is that there's so much value in, like you said, setting a goal and working to achieve it. And I mean, I hate to say it. It sounds really cliche, but it's like there's beauty in the struggle in a sense, where like that reveals character, like it's persevering and working, and sometimes going against the grain and pushing, and sometimes suffering even. I mean, I feel like you see that in so many different facets of life. I was just talking to my wife today. My wife is from Cuba, so she came here in like 2000. And until 2017, she was living in Miami, which is essentially just North Cuba, So coming up here to Jersey, she experienced her first real winter. And then today, this is a couple of years ago, I was explaining, like, babe, do you realize now that going through winter and learning how to just function in the cold? I mean, consider your friends that have only lived down there. Like, they come up here in the cold and they fall to pieces. Like, you're basically a pro now. Like you're carved out of wood. Like I don't want to say you're hardened, but you're tough. You can handle things. You're capable. You're strong. You reveal that grit that you have inside. And it's even something as simple as that. If you extrapolate that to, working hard to achieve a goal, like that is something that really builds character, going through hardship. And that's always something that's been in my head. Why, like, I want to give my son all these things. I want to go take him to the comic book store and buy him whatever manga he wants, But at the same time, I want him to learn that you have to work for these things, because like I said, I don't want him to be that spoiled kid. We're not rich, but we're okay. I don't want him to to not appreciate what it takes to get to just okay, because there's a lot of people that aren't even that okay, you know. So that's been the biggest back and forth for me, because I know with my wife, because she came from, you know, it's Cuba. Like, what do you have? You don't have anything. For her birthday, she wanted an apple, you know, like that. Think about that. And then if you consider now,
wait,
like,
an apple that you eat or Apple product?
no, like an apple that you eat. Like when she first came to the U.S., they asked her, like, "What's the first thing you want?" I want a bowl of ice cream. That was it. And it like just talking to her and my in-laws and learning about that, and then seeing the generosity, you know, the selflessness that they still have, like even now that they're comfortable and in a good situation like this. You know, like I always say this about my wife, like she would give you the shirt off her back because she's that kind of person. And especially being, you know, coming from that kind of background, it's even more impressive. And I'm afraid that my kid is not getting any kind of challenge. You know, there's nothing pushing back on him to review, say, hey, what's really in there? You know, what's below the surface? What are you actually made of? That I think is what there's real legitimate value in that.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I think we all go through that. We're all gonna. Any human is gonna go through that at some point in their life. But I agree with what you're saying, though. I definitely feel like, you know, if we can teach our children that at an early age, it would be so much easier for them in adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, I think that when you're a creative in general, though, as well, you're gonna go through that process too, because when you're birthing, you know, your creation and it's you know, you want to get to the end result, that does take struggle and internal fortitude, and you know, you have to kind of bring forth those same emotions as you would when you're, you know, working for something, you know, like, you know, you're going to school and, you know, you're working to pay tuition or something like that. Like I think that you're gathering energy from the same place. So in the creative process, like for instance, your podcast, you know, you have your ups and downs within your podcast, but you know, it's going to take that determination and that grit to keep you going forward.
Yeah, you got to dig deep. That's what it really comes down to. Dig deep and see what's really in there. I just think it like because this is always something that I've battled with since I became a dad. Now I met my wife in 2015, and you know, my son is my stepson. You know, so I didn't meet him till he had just turned 5. You know, now we have one on the way due in June, and I'm just thinking about this. Thank you.
Congrats.
I'm trying to be the best dad I can, and like I said, I don't want to make things too easy for him, if that makes sense. And I think subconsciously that started to show in a weird way. Like I feel like all he wants to do is make me laugh. He wants to tell a joke that's so good he can make dad laugh. And subconsciously, I'm such an asshole about it because like I don't laugh. He comes up, I'll just be sitting on the couch, I'll be trying to read something on the phone. Like, hey dad, is this weird? And does some like kid thing, you know, where he just like falls down on the ground. And it's like there's something in me where I have like a mental block where I can't laugh. Like, it's not good enough. You got to work harder, bro. Like, where's the punchline? Where's the setup? You could have had a callback there, you know. And it's so dumb because he's 9 years old, and I feel like it's starting to come out. So I'm trying to like show him, you know, stand-up comedy, and he's starting to like pick up on certain lines, you know. And he'll pull it out at an appropriate time. Like, see, that's what I'm talking about. You earned that one. You earned that laugh. Congratulations. But there's a part of me that is like, I think I'm just a little fucked up. I don't know.
No, I think that's what we're supposed to do as dads. Like, you know, you're preparing him to be a man. You know, you're preparing him for what it is to be a man and how the world is. I mean, regardless of what people think, I believe that the world looks at men differently than they look at women.
100%.
And they're going to treat them. Society is going to treat you differently than they would treat a woman. So, you know, you're preparing them for that manhood, and I mean, I applaud you.
You know, I'm gonna disagree. You sound like you're turning into Joe Jackson out here.
That's what I'm worried about. I mean, I don't have the hair for it, but you know, I don't. He's not like playing with a rat under the sink. I hope not. You know, yeah.
That's boys need that though.
I do too. I do
think boys
too.
need that.
He needs a little bit of roughhouse, a little bit of tough love. Not,
Yeah.
and there's a very a firm line there that you can cross. And I'm not crossing it. I hope, fingers crossed. But I think that's the thing. Like as boys, there's different things that are expected of us from society. And my wife, bless her heart, she wants to give him everything that she didn't have, but at the same point, he's not living the same life she had. So it's not appreciated the way she appreciates it, or that she would have back then. And I'm trying to tell her, I'm like, I understand you want to do all this stuff for your kid. You don't want him to feel like you felt back then, but at the same time, he has never felt anything remotely like that. Like maybe a little bit of that might do him a little bit of good. And it sounds weird, but I don't know. It's just it's a balance, like you said. You're balancing on the edge of a knife, because if you consider the people that think of like an entrepreneur, you came from nothing, you built yourself, you're a self-made man, you become wealthy. It's like, oh well, nobody helped me. I was poor. I was living, on Section 8 my whole life. It's like, okay, you're one guy. What about all the people that never made it out? That maybe got addicted to drugs, maybe that just are still poor to this day. There's a lot more of them than there are you. So it's like, it could go either way. And that's the thing I'm trying to be mindful of.
Yeah, it makes me think, do any of you have friends who received everything they wanted growing up and where they are today? Like, because I was trying to think I can't think of anyone particular, but, that would be like kind of thinking like, okay, are they still good? Are they great? Like, what is that? But I can't really think of anyone.
The closest
I'm close with.
Yeah, the closest I got is one friend who came from a wealthy family, but his dad was an immigrant coming over here, self-made man. They were wealthy, but his dad taught him how to work and the value of hustling and working hard. And this guy works harder than anybody I know. And he also has more than any of my friends. So, he earns it. So it's not really the same. Like he's got the work ethic.
Yeah. When you come across like interviews of people like that, right? Like they come from wealth, but they also have that work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting, right? Where the parents, had the foresight to be like, hey, I'm going to make sure you have a work ethic, but you're going to have everything that you want at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
He's always working, and he just drove a lot more nice cars than I ever had.
Yeah, because you see people who take over businesses and they, then it explodes from there. Who's an example? Like Gary Vee always talks about, he took over his family business and then grew it, and he's growing from there. But he was taught a work ethic. He worked all through his 20s, and it's something to that, specifically for men, right? To make sure that they're not lazy. It's so important not to be lazy, and especially in this world where you can have any type of job, create any type of job if you want online. I think it's important to have that work ethic instilled in all of your children, but to make sure that men know that they're supposed to provide in some capacity when they do start their own family.
I think in a lot of senses, there's nothing viewed as lower than a lazy man, or a man who can't provide for his family. Like that's like the worst stigma that could be attached to you, and regardless of what culture you come from.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. You're like, oh, he's a deadbeat. He can't even take care of his own family. Think about that. That one stings.
Yeah. I think Chris Rock said the joke in terms of only women, children, and dogs get loved unconditionally.
Yes.
So that a man is only loved under the condition that he provides something.
Yeah. But that's true. I mean, whether or not it becomes true effectively, especially in 2020 when things have changed so much. But as far as we were taught, or as far as things worked when we were coming up, that's what it was. You're loved based on whether or not you're providing, whether or not you're there and providing some kind of value,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Brown, you're making a face right now. You're making me nervous. What did I say wrong?
No, nothing. I was typing in the group chat that I got to get ready for bed soon.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, we already hit an hour, so we can tap out now. And I don't know if you want in the future. I've been really enjoying the conversation. We can come back and do it again sometime.
No, I was gonna mention that to Mookie after we got off too. I was really interested in doing something else.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess we should I guess wrap it up with like one of the hit one more question and then check out.
I'm down.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put a pin in it right here. We won't do the humble pie or any of that stuff. So I want to be respectful. I'm really appreciative you guys took the time to come talk to a total stranger here. So before we go, why don't you just plug whatever you guys got, and what we'll do is we'll agree to we'll pick this conversation back up again in the future. We'll collaborate again.
Absolutely.
All right. So what do you got? Tell them where they can find you.
Okay. So you can find us on 30tolifepod.com, official website of 30 to Life. You can on Instagram at 30 to Life Pod, Twitter at 30 to Life Pod, Facebook at 30 to Life Pod. You can follow me on at MRMUKI, Mr. Mookie, on Instagram. And that's where you can find us. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms: Apple, iHeart, Amazon Music. I mean, everywhere. We made sure to be on every major platform. Brown, what about you? Where can we find you?
Oh, you can find me at Brown302Life on Instagram. That's pretty much it. Everything that he said, in terms of our Instagram handle. We find us on YouTube very soon after January, right? We should start
we
on YouTube.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, this will be the first episode of the year, but when this comes out, so this will happy 2021 to anybody listening.
Happy awesome. Yeah, 2021 COVID go away. And I just want to say, like, our podcast is for 30 something. So if you're listening at 30 something, listen to our podcast, follow us, subscribe, share with a friend, don't be stingy, give to the needy, and the people need to hear 30 to Life podcast.
Yeah, and if you're out to add to that, if you're ever interested in listening to a podcast from two well-educated African-American men spawned from the inner city of Jersey, Jersey City, New Jersey, who grew up from a middle-class family trying to make it better for their children. We are the spawn of them, and we represent good stock, and we want to pass these gems on to other youthful people who might not have had the same opportunities that we had, and just redefine your Black experience, and hopefully you'll tune in.
Yeah, and we're part-time stand-up comedians too, so not in real life but in our mind. So if you want to hear some jokes, we sprinkle a little bit of comedy in there just so it's not serious all the time. So we'll definitely, it's a little bit light at times on the podcast. So it's a balancing act, much like parenting, as we just discussed.
That's what this is all about here. It's like we're the piece of cheese, with the pill inside that you give your dog. You're not gonna eat it by itself, so you gotta hide it in there. We conceal it in like the fun and the humor. So
exactly.
Try to think. We're a podcast in multivitamin form. Or a multivitamin in podcast form. What the fuck am I talking about? Anyway, don't even listen to my show anymore, people. I'm sorry, I can't talk.
No, everybody listen, tune in, subscribe.
Yeah. Hey, well, listen, if they're hearing this, they already know how to find this podcast. You guys are available wherever we are. So literally just hit, go in the search bar and type in 30 to Life, and you will find these two fine gentlemen there.
Yes, and if you just want to see something nice, we were featured on Apple Podcasts. So the Apple Podcast gods have been friendly to us in 2020. So thank you, Apple.
Awesome.
Oh no! But before we go, we got to do our outro intro that we do every episode. So I'm gonna do it so you can just hear it. You can add it if you want, but
I'll cut it back in.
Here it goes. Hum.
Okay, this guy's. Wait, hold on. I got one more.
Okay, get ready. Yeah, clear your lungs, because you're the soprano of the group. Okay, here goes. It's your boy Mookie,
and your favorite color in the world, brown.
30 to Life. We out.
That's it. Thanks for listening, folks. So make sure you guys check out Brown and Mookie. Get them on IG, Twitter, everywhere. Make sure you follow the podcast and listen to it. It's really enjoyable. If you guys like this, there's no reason you shouldn't like that. It's a similar kind of style. So, and they were really nice guys, and I really liked it. I'm looking forward, hoping we could, do something together again in the future, because I think there's a lot of gems to be mined there, So you guys know where to find us. Everywhere they just named, that's where we are. Pod Amongst Men on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure if you have any questions, any business queries, hit me up, podamongstmen@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe and like on YouTube. Make sure you give us a good rating on iTunes, and follow us on Spotify. Follow. That's the thing. Follow. Subscribe to the show on Spotify. You might not do that, but you should. You really should. It's 2021. Turn over a new leaf, guys. People. It's not just guys listening to the show, right? Right? And yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you this week. So I'll talk to you next week. Peace.